Is anyone in the room? Someone please chat to me if you can hear me. Go ahead and talk in the chat. What's up, Jade? Thanks for coming. What else do we have here? Sophia, Ed. What's up, Ed? Thanks everyone for coming in on a Friday. Excited to have you here. Brandon. Is that Brandon from The One Thing? It is Brandon. Brandon, got a special surprise for you today. Hey, James. Excited you guys are all here. Let me just make sure my co-host can get in here. Looks like he might be having a little technical challenges. Let me just share this. Where's everybody from? Where's everybody calling in from? Happy Friday, Trip. Let's see. Regie.ai. Save. All right, I got my partner coming in here soon. We got folks from Austin, Denver, Brazil, Sophia. Very nice. We're in Brazil. It's a big country. Camp Hill, PA, Nashville, Montreal, Barcelona. Alessandro, you made it. Alessandro, I don't know if we're going to get to your sequence today, but we are going to get to your sequence. I actually wrote a lot of it already. The free trial stuff, I just had to do a little bit more research on because we were focused on outbound sequences. But I will definitely get you something, my friend. Thanks for adding it in. We will cover it. I just don't know if we're going to do it today now. Let me see if I can get James on stage here. Just give me one sec, folks. James. I'm just getting my partner in here, making sure he's having some technical difficulties. Let's see where we're at here. Alessandro, no worries, man. Appreciate you sending everything in. We got a bunch of sequences in. I'm super pumped to go over a few. We have two specific ones we're going to get to. One for sure today. If we have more time, we're going to get to the second one.
That's right.
Welcome to the free, James.
Hey, glad to be here.
Yeah. We got some folks. We're going to give it a couple more minutes just to let folks in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Looks like we got Davis Toll, Connor Spiritus, Jade Williams, Sophia, Carmel. Love that name, Carmel. I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name because I feel like I'm going to not do it service. Amy, what's up, Katie? Bob, Ryan from the Forage, Troy, Brandon. Got a good crowd in here today. I'm excited. What's everybody most excited about seeing? Is it just some sequence ideas? Is it how the heck to breaking down sequences like a boss? Well, we got James here, so I think we'll be in pretty good shape. Would also like to hear like what if anybody's having specific issues, how to jazz up my old dusty sequences. They get dusty pretty quickly. They just get stale very fast. You know, these trends change months on end. People share templates, and then, you know, next thing you find out, you know, whatever you're using, thousands of other people are using, and now you got to switch it up and rewrite it. Constant new ideas. In terms of maybe if you share in the crowd, I know obviously everybody didn't get to submit their sequences. But if there's something specific that you're not seeing in your sequence performance, whether it's third, fourth, fifth step, just not any engagement at all, or something specific that you'd like us to cover and try to call out, happy to do it. Just let us know what to do with bounces. Oh man, you better find better data.
Yeah, Ryan. I'm always wondering that as well. What do I do with all these bounces? Run it through a cleanser.
Yep.
Get it out of there.
Well, let's get moving. We're at 2:05 here Eastern. Welcome. My name is Rocco Savage, head of growth here at Regie.ai. If you folks don't know, Regie writes high performing sequences built on best practices and performant data, and we use AI to help assist and enrich our sequences, which you'll see some of that today. I have James Reichmuth here, who's our head of all customers, who is a sequence master and is going to break down some sequence issues and repair them, diagnose and repair sequences today. So I think you ready to jump in, James?
Let's do it. I'm excited.
All right. So first up, we have Dahlia Labs coming in. Let's see. Dahlia Labs is here. I don't know if they are. Either way, just so you know, if you do submit your sequence, James, are you going to share your screen? Or
yep, I am pulling it up right now.
Cool. If you do submit your sequence and we do some rewriting, we're actually going to download it and send it back to you. So you're going to have something to test if you prefer, if you'd like to check it out. So there is some benefit here outside of just us ripping it apart publicly. You will receive something with better benefit. So
that's exactly
great. So let's hop in, James.
Perfect.
What do you see here?
So what I'm doing on the screen right now is I'm going to be transitioning from this tab, which has the original content that we were sent, the original sequence structure that we were sent, and then I'll be showing off what we're going to do with that in Regie.ai, how we're going to improve that sequence. Let me just adjust my screen size here so y'all can actually read what's going on. So, when I sat down to look at this, the first thing that I like to think about is, based on the persona that we're going after here, in this case, it's going to be, talent acquisition folks, folks involved in HR, folks that are involved heavily in the hiring process. Mostly at that director, VP level, the folks trying to capitalize on those applicants coming in. So I think about that, and I think about the day-to-day work that those people are doing, right? And one of the things that we know to be true about sequences is that an effective sequence that's going to run usually has a good mix of touch points with it. SalesLoft recently published that, removing all of the email steps or all of the call steps from any given sequence actually leads to between a 95 and a 99% reduction in response rate, which is a huge number and a lot of low-hanging fruit that you can get there. So right away, this sequence came in. It was 15 steps over 25 days. It had a great mix of LinkedIn connections, social steps, phone call steps, and email steps. So the structure of it was actually really good to begin with, which is always very promising to see. It's very steeped in best practice there, and it's steeped in, generating that stacking effect. So then we start looking at the content itself, right? So, this first subject line here, this is fine, accelerate applicant flow. That has some language in it that's going to be timely for the folks that they're reaching out to. And then what we really see here is just a very truncated block of text, right? So starts off by saying you'd be surprised at the crazy number of interested qualified candidates that leave job pages without applying. Curious to hear how we're helping companies convert those lost candidates into applicants. And what I see here right away is we're acknowledging where they're at to an extent, right? So you'd be surprised at the crazy number of interested qualified candidates that leave job pages without applying. But can we make that line, more relevant to that point? Can we make it more specific to what that org's doing? So there's kind of two options that you could actually go with here, right? You could make this first step a manual email, by which you're actually going to personalize towards something relevant to the specific business you're reaching out to. So for example, like one way that I would personalize for this is I might say, okay, like looking at Regie.ai, I see you've had, these 2 job openings listed for the last 55 days. Then you can surmise that, hey, you're likely losing out on applicants who might be visiting your job page, and you can tie that relevancy in more specifically to that organization that you're going after there. The other thing that you could do if you do want to make it more general is you could, make it more geared towards that, broad level piece by including a data point in it. So, did you know that 94% of candidates who visit job pages don't actually end up applying? And so you capture them with that really eye-catching headline right there that's going to have that data enrichment in it. And then you can immediately follow that up with, how you actually help capitalize on those lost candidates through that dedicated nurture. So not only is it making it more specific about the problem that you're solving, it's actually making the solution more simplified and more specific to the problem that you're solving too. And then it's just, probing for either interest or, whether it's worth their time. Like, is it worth a quick call to discuss those application needs?
Yeah, Ryan said data point, and we actually led with it in this one.
There you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's right. One of the other things that I love to do, though, when I'm reviewing emails is I do love to open up our AI assistant and just put in a brief description from the company's website and just see what I get. Because oftentimes, if I'm struggling to think of the words to say, our AI assistant can get me thinking about it in a more, broad way, and then it's going to give me some text that I can very easily cut down, right? So it's scouring the web, it's pulling in, relevant data according to what we put in for the company name, if we put a company URL there. And it's giving us this text here. So now you can very easily copy and paste this, move it over, and then start to edit that down, which is the workflow that we would go through there. So when you're thinking about that intro step and kind of the first email that you're sending out there, especially if it's a cold outreach, like you really have to focus on making it relevant from the very beginning there. With that opening line and really optimizing for that. Because even if the first email is not where you're going to get a response, and it likely isn't, you're going to get a response a little bit later in the sequence once you've really layered on that stacking effect. What you can do, though, is you can establish expertise and start to educate and provide awareness on what you're doing. And then at every step after that, you're just doubling down on that pain and you're doubling down on the value that you can provide there to really get that going.
Yeah, I think the big thing here too is look at the word count. It's 56 words. It's short, sweet, to the point, and most of the text is your pain point, your value proposition.
That's exactly right. And then you may have seen just now on my screen, what I did was I took the email that we rewrote and I plugged it into our subject line generator right here. And Reggie came up with some subject lines. And you'll notice that this is also taking into context that I led with data, and it's pulling in additional data that may be relative, right? So oftentimes we would coach on, you don't want to say necessarily the same exact thing because it's very valuable real estate between the subject line and that first line. But something like this that's like highlighting the cost that folks are losing out on with those candidates, like you could take something like this, cut it down to a few more simple words and get that added in there.
I like it. Any questions?
Yeah, I just saw Katie come in with a question. Is it better to have just one question or 2 questions okay in an intro email? So it depends on what you're asking. So typically we'll coach that if you're asking somebody to take action, you only want to be asking them to take one action because you don't want them to overcomplicate what you're asking them to do, and you want to keep them focused in on that. It can be okay to open with a question like this, though, because what we're doing here is an education-based opener. Like, did you know that, XYZ impacts, ABC, right? And then, tying that out with your call to action at the bottom there about what you want that person to do next.
Nice. What else we got here?
Perfect.
Any questions on this? Would love to hear how long and lengthy some of your first emails are. And hopefully this will give you some ideas on how to condense it and shorten it and get to the point.
Perfect.
All right.
So then we'll come down here. So you'll see the LinkedIn step, the call step's going to all happen on that day. We're going to have a quick burst there. and then we'll come into our follow-up messaging. So follow-up messaging is where we get a lot of questions at. And, it's this kind of like the tale as old as time, right? Like, is the bump step, is the thought step good enough anymore? And the fact is that as different tactics for email writing come in and out of vogue, and as we progress, as a society, as far as what we're doing from an email perspective and how we're engaging in day-to-day business, the things that were effective a year ago that now everybody's doing become less effective. So in our follow-ups, it's important. And if you caught last week's webinar, I talked a lot about, crafting that narrative throughout your sequence structure and really focusing on those clusters and how you can, share that narrative throughout. What you want to do in your follow-ups is you want to then double down again on that pain and that value that you initially laid out in the beginning there, while still continuing to meet your prospect where they're at and where they're going. So, for this one, we went ahead, while you're looking for the most qualified candidates, the majority of those get lost in the shuffle from low career site conversion rates. So you'll notice with this opener, what we're doing is we're focusing, more on where that prospect is at. And we're taking some of the data out of it because we had the data in the opener from before. We don't want to just pound them with numbers all day. So we're actually simplifying the language to be more conversational around how somebody might actually talk about this, in the day-to-day. And then again, we sum it up very easily with the value prop here to just show them what they can get out of working with us, and probing for interest. We want to be respectful of folks' time, but we also want to highlight value where we can. So probing for interest, we've actually seen a trend recently where, that is a CTA versus asking for a specific day and time tends to be, a little bit higher performing. And I think I saw a question from Trip about the first touch. Do you think length matters on the first touch for different level of recipients, i.e. VP versus senior? And it certainly does. So, if you're targeting, those VP and those senior execs, you can imagine that they're, likely either browsing their inbox very quickly in their busy day to day, or, they might actually be browsing their inbox on their phone, like after hours, and going through some of those prospecting emails that they're getting. So with those, it's even more important to really hone in on what the pain that specific individual at those companies feel. So that you can really craft something that's hyper relevant to them. The higher that you go up in the chain, the more relevant you need to be, because there's so many more people competing for those folks' attention and time. So the higher up we go in the chain, we tend to focus more on, shorter length. Again, talking from last week, average email reading time today is about 11 seconds or so. So really nailing that at the beginning is really critical to actually getting that person to engage and read and ultimately, hopefully, respond.
I like it.
Thanks, Rocco. So then going down in the sequence a little bit, so we did this first email here, and then we edited this follow-up to just flow a little bit differently. And then in the sequence that we received, one of the things that we noticed here was that each one of these emails was its own subject line, and there was no threading. And one of the recommendations that we make is to definitely, especially as you're thinking about those different clusters that you're running, make sure that those are threaded in the beginning with some of those follow-ups, and then do a break before doing like a reintroduction and kind of restating the value. And the reason for that is kind of twofold, right? As we're going through the sequence, we're generating what we call the stacking effect. So with each opportunity, you're building more awareness, you're building more engagement, and you're actually moving that prospect closer and closer to engaging. And by having a good amount of touch points like phone calls and emails and LinkedIn steps, you're giving yourself more at-bats to ultimately get that prospect to engage. Threading it and having your follow-ups come through that thread just makes it much easier to have that prospect able to view all of the amazing information that you've done there. And it can actually be kind of a passive relationship building tool, because you're establishing that like you are somebody who cares about getting the details right, you care about solving problems, and that's what you're doing through your content. So you'll notice here what we did was we actually made this all one thread going through here all the way through to this referral email. And this referral email typically comes as the third email in one of our sequences. And we like to place it at that point because it tends to do one of two things. It either unstucks that prospect and gets them to respond, either acknowledging that they've been busy, but they'd like to talk, acknowledging that they're not interested in the solution, or actually giving you a response that directs you to the person who you ultimately want to be talking to begin with. It's like a nice courtesy step. This is something that feels very human. So on and so forth there. I'm just looking at the chat real quick, seeing if there's any good questions coming up that I'm glossing over. Rocker, are you seeing anything?
Let's see here. Yep. So regarding subject lines, are there words or special characters to avoid?
Words or special characters to avoid? That's a really great question. So when it comes to the subject line itself, especially for cold outbound, you definitely want to avoid like any strange symbols. All caps can be flagged by spam filters and things like that. And then also using like certain levels of punctuation in there can also cause those emails to be flagged as spam. The sweet spot that we see with subject lines for the most part, and this kind of varies industry to industry, but for the most part, keeping those subject lines between 2 to 4 words and really thinking about how that can be a thought-provoking piece, kind of like what you're seeing on your screen here with like the costing 24K per lost hire versus something that's like a little bit more condensed that's just like thought-provoking or curiosity generating.
I like it. All right, we got a couple questions coming in. Let me scroll up here. I'm trying to make some finishing touches on Brandon's sequence because some of my stuff got deleted. So sorry for my. Okay, I know sometimes Outlook sends messages to spam depending on the subject line. Yeah, certainly. Also, how do you feel about emojis in emails?
Yeah, so emojis and emails, again, that's something that, like, I definitely encourage testing, just because like this is a new tactic that's really cropped up in the industry. When we look at our data, though, we do tend to see that having emojis in the like body of the message or having too many emojis can actually cause a decrease in response rate. But if you think about it from a subject line piece, if like the emoji that you're using or what you're using in that subject line is, relative to like what you're trying to say, it can be something that's worth testing from an engagement perspective. But again, to what we were just saying about deliverability, that's usually better used on your warmer prospects or folks that are raising their hands and opting into some sort of like inbound marketing lead.
Got it. All right. Good to know. Let's see, emojis. They don't have a good first sentence for the follow-up emails. I think when your inbox just shows checking back on this, they get deleted quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So, that's something that we talk about a lot, right? Those follow-up emails. So in this one, we did the same thing here where we're trying to personalize for that relevancy. Like using something relevant as an opening line is going to be more effective most times than doing something simple like, I'm interested in speaking with you or, just a general thoughts bump. But if you need help in trying to find some of the ways to flesh out that more, again, what I'm doing on the right-hand side here is I'm just plugging some information in on that AI assistant to see if it's going to source and find any valuable things that I could add in, right? So like this thing that it just pulled here, this might be a statistic that I would want to lead with on this follow-up email there. So again, the way that I think about this is I always ask myself, like, okay, my first email, what was I trying to convey and make that prospect feel based on what I can demonstrate? And in that follow-up, how can I double down on that and show them, hey, like I'm invested in solving this for you and I'm here to help. I'm not here to sell you.
I like it. All right, let's see what else we have here. Avoid the characters who aren't going to respond. Absolutely, Ryan. You got it, man. Spam trigger words, fantastic. Katie just added in a resource for spam trigger words. Always good to filter your emails for those, for sure. Gentle ping on the below. Go ahead.
I'm guessing that Katie shared the HubSpot resource, and I would definitely encourage anybody who's really trying to make sure that their copy doesn't have any spam words in it. Like that's a fantastic resource to use as just a quick gut check on the vocabulary of your emails.
All right, what else we have in here? Ryan has a sequence suggestion. Ryan, would love to know if you're getting good results on that. If you could share any data around that, that'd be fantastic. We go back and forth on these bump emails because you want them to read the first email, especially if it's a reply, but you also don't want to provide no context, right? All right, William Reddick. How about LinkedIn invites at the beginning of the sequence? Let's start with that question. He's got a couple.
That's a great question. So yeah, when I'm thinking about like LinkedIn content that's going to go out in tandem with the overall sequence, I always try to align the content that I'm sending there to what I'm also sending in my emails. But the difference that I make with LinkedIn is I look at LinkedIn as like it's a step closer to like coming into somebody's house. Like we've come out of the inbox now, and now we're into a social media platform. So you want to make sure that you're not just coming off super salesy or super marketing or asking for too much over that. So what I like to do is I like to say something along the lines of, hey, just left you a quick voicemail on this, or just left you a quick message on this. Thought you might need some help with your talent acquisition. This is what we do. If it makes sense, I'd love to have a conversation about it. Hope you're doing well. So just something that's friendly, it's a little bit personal. It's not like too pushy, but does double down on what you said, because again, you're not here to sell, you're here to help, right?
Yep. Do you align your messaging with what you'll be sending in your email, or do you tend to keep it a little more simple? And he's referring to LinkedIn.
Yeah, so I definitely tend to keep my LinkedIn messages a little bit more simple, which if you're going through the exercise at the beginning here of really simplifying your email message as well, like you'll have the ability to really do that more effectively. So like with this, if I know that I'm going to be sharing a lot of data, I might say something along the lines of like, hey, I just sent you over some data that I thought might be interesting to you. By the way, this is how we know each other. This is how you might know me. If you be interested in chatting, would love to chat more. Pieces like that.
All right. What is a good open? So Ryan said, thank you for adding in those open rates and reply rates, Ryan. 6.6 reply rates, fantastic for just about any emails. Actually, the open and reply benchmarks are actually a lot lower than published online. I'll say that we have access to roughly 55 million emails right now, and the outbound reply rates are like below 2% on average, 1.6, I think. Brandon, it's certainly a good one. Certainly good. What is a good open reply? Jade asked, what is a good open reply unsubscribe rate to use as a benchmark?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Jade. And so it's going to depend largely on the industry that you're in, as well as the type of outreach that you're doing. For us, like we really want to see, and I'm trying to recall offhand, Rago, if you know offhand, what we just published in the email benchmarking report that we sent out.
Let me look it up.
Yeah. I think that it was around like 27% plus for open rate, and then between like 3 and 5% for reply is like pretty good for cold outbound.
Yep.
So
looks like open. So 2021 email open global average is actually 16.9 open rate. The thing is you want to break it down between outbound and inbound as well, because you're going to see a dramatically different reply rate and open rate. Open rates on inbound, actually reply rates on inbound are 6.6 on average. Yeah, let me go ahead and share this with you guys. Benchmark report. And just so you guys know, shameless plug here, because it is our workshop. We're sending out an up-to-date newsletter every first of the month on the prior month's top benchmark. So this was based on 2021 benchmarks, but we're just going to keep sending new benchmark data out each month. If you are in our system, you are going to receive it, I promise. But that should give you a good benchmark, Jade. Hopefully that answers your question. Cool. What else do we have? How far through are we, James?
Right, so we're on the final 3 emails right now.
Okay. So this one looks like a reintroduction. So now we're starting a new thread.
That's exactly right. So now is when we're going to come in and we're going to start that new thread. I'm just doing some AI inputs on the right-hand side because I might want a little help getting this message up and running. But for the most part, what we're going to be focused on in this reintro is, again, this is where you might introduce a secondary pain point or a secondary value prop. So your first 3 clustered sequence was really focused on that initial narrative of, okay, like here's the data, here's the business impact, here's how we can solve it. And now you might take a different approach. So you might double down on some of that information, or you might do like what we're doing here, which is going to be more focused on, what the leader that you're talking to cares about, and then tying it into how it's going to actually streamline things for your team. That way they can see now, okay, like probably seen this company's name a few times. This person has called me a couple of times. So you've maybe seen their name there as well. And now we're hammering home additional information on how we can actually help their team. And then again, as you'll see here on the right-hand side, this is pulling in content. This is also going to help, pull in additional data or additional, keywords and things that you might want to drop throughout this email here. And then same thing from before, you want to have, subject line here. So if this one just says collaborate, sometimes what we'll do is we'll test out having a longer subject line and then a shorter subject line. Just to see which one comes out more. And when I say shorter, I mean like hyper short, like this, where it's just one word. So like even this, like I might say something like.
Shout out to Justin Michael for the one word subject lines too.
Big shout out to Justin Michael and his growth subject line. Very high performing.
Talent woes.
So we might do talent woes, and then we're going to do the same thing here. We're in the follow-up messaging that we're going to have throughout this. We're going to make sure we're including additional value-added data, making it relevant to the person there. If you're taking a manual approach to this, you might also, this is where you might come in and reference back something specific about their website or something specific about the job postings that you've seen before. That way they know that the message is really geared towards them. And then again, we are getting a little bit more specific with our CTAs now. So we're still probing for interest, but now, we're asking them to do a walkthrough. We might be asking to do a demo at this point. And at this point in the sequence, since we're a little bit deeper in, this is the 5th email that we've sent them. It's appropriate to start trying to move them towards that next step to at least get a response, because a no isn't a bad thing. A no just means you can focus your efforts on the folks who are still going to be interested in your help.
Yep. Jade with a couple questions. Jade's first one is, how do you feel about using humor in emails? Jade, the more personality, the better, as long as it likely will resonate with the target persona. So just keep that in mind. I'm crafting a couple of inbound emails right now that have a little more character, my personal character in them, and we're testing them and seeing how they work. Versus traditional stuff, but the more personality you can put in, especially in the first line, like the whole point of the subject line is to get them to read the first line, and the whole point of the first line is to get them to read the second line and get them to open up the email. So if you can put some personality in there outside of hopeful personalization, etc., it's certainly going to help. Second question: where do you get those stats to use in our emails, and is it important to include attribute? Where do you get those stats you use in our emails, and is it important to include attribution? Are you meaning in your emails? Okay, so this one was pulled. The person who sent this in, this is actually, I think, right on their website. So this is from them. So Dahlia Labs has this stat right on the website. That's why it was used. Is it? Am I answering your question, Jade? Or in the benchmark report? That's right. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, well, and broadly, one of the things that I did too, as I was looking at this, is sometimes I like to find other statistics from third-party resources that are outside of the website. So, like I've looked up a few studies that were, published within the last 2 years that highlighted some of those rates. In a cold email, you don't have to cite it. I mean, that's not a requirement, but it is good to know where you got it and to store the places that you got it from, because you might get a response in the inbox that's like, hey, like, it's really interesting information. Could you send me what that's from? So being able to verify the data is incredibly important, but it's there's no legal requirement or anything to actually like link to or cite that in the email itself. It's a great question, Jade. Okay, so we're on the final 2 emails here. So for this one, basically what we're looking at here is Now we're just getting very simple and getting straight to value. So we've done the education and the awareness throughout the first part of the sequence. Now they've gotten closer to the end of the sequence here, but they haven't opted out yet. So now we just want to give them a lot of value as much as we can. So for this one, like we're attaching a few ways that they turn passive job seekers into engaged candidates, and then you would insert, those research articles, those case studies right here as a link, ideally, rather than an attachment, just to protect, the deliverability of the email and everything. But again, at this point, since we are deeper into the email, we've sent an email a few times already, like including some links at this point isn't a bad practice to use at all. Another thing that you could do alternatively to this, if you didn't want to link anything there, is just go into some of that social proof or those case studies or whatever it may be and just pull some pull quotes out of it and drop those in so that they can get a reference for how you've helped another customer or how you've helped another individual see success. And then finally, for this one, taking the content and drilling it down, this is more of a breakup email. This one we actually didn't do a ton of editing on. This one was actually really well written. It was just in a different place in the sequence. This actually came a little bit earlier in the sequence that we were looking at. But we recommended moving this into the breakup step because it was so wordy, but it was also still so full of like really good value. And at this point, if they haven't engaged either by picking up the phone or by responding to one of your emails by this point, like now we're just politely saying like, hey, very confident that we could help you out with this based on what we know to be true about you as the persona that you are and what we know about your business. This is the information. But that said, like, thanks for all your hard work. And we'll re-engage in the future because it might not be the right time right now. And the breakup step always ends up being really important because sometimes what'll happen is you'll start to get responses then that are like, oh, like, no, like I do have interest in this. I've just been swamped. Yeah, exactly, William. Breaking up is very hard. People don't want to break up. So, this can always be a good thing to deploy at the end of that sequence to really capitalize on that.
All right. Breakup is hard. Okay. Any questions, comments? Is this helpful? Say yes. If it's not helpful, say yes. Fantastic. Hi to the Dahlia team. That's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it seemed like they had a cool product.
We're connecting old friends. That's awesome. Yeah, it is. I got a chance to look at the Dahlia website earlier. It's a very cool product. Mm-hmm. For the talent acquisition needs, like definitely give them a look.
Great. Well, let's hop into, I can take over and we're going to go in. Brandon, you still hanging out? We're going to go into your sequence. Appreciate you sending it over. Brandon, you're going to receive a sequence after 2. I'm going to tighten this up a little bit more for you. I had a little bit of a computer snafu and it deleted some of my written stuff, but either way, I will send it over. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Window. Give me 1 second, folks.
And Rocco, while you're pulling that up, I'll keep an eye on the chat for you.
All right, great. Okay, can you see my screen? Oh, I can see my screen. There we go.
There you go.
That's great. Okay, so let's hop in. So Brandon sent over a sequence from the One Thing, which just to show you guys the website, here it is. Looks like, Brandon, you are targeting executives in the IT industry to sell some form of, I would assume, this consulting and workshops and training or keynotes, any of these. I'm super familiar with this business model and excited to talk about it. I actually used to work for Tony Robbins, so familiar with a lot of this messaging too.
Yeah.
And the ins and outs of it. Consulting, fantastic. So, okay, so let's hop in. So this is the one that Brandon sent over. I love, number one, I love how you've focused on targeting different problems and what the transformation is here, which is the value prop. Everything Regie builds is predicated on the 3 Ps, which is who's the persona you're targeting, what's the pain point you're trying to dig in for to create relevancy, and then what's the value prop you are you're trying to drive home for credibility. Excuse me. So C-level decision makers with a team of 25 plus. They're targeting folks in IT companies. And let's just dive in here. So here's the first email. So the first thing I noticed is just the length of the email. If I'm targeting executives, chances are I'm going to try to keep that email as short as humanly possible, because Brandon, you're selling time efficiency, you're selling revenue efficiency, and these folks are bogged down. So how can you shorten it and make it as catchy as possible and really dive in on that pain as fast as possible? It feels more like a marketing email to me, because it's not driven with some level of personalization. And then the one thing that I would watch out for here, Brandon, is you do have a link here, which there's nothing wrong with a link in an email. I would shy away from a link on the first email, and maybe the second, maybe send a link on the third, just to make sure that you're going to land into the inbox. So if there's something here that you wanted to see, just say, hey, PS, here's an interesting data point that we pulled out from this one piece. So let's dive in. All right, so first email. So this actual subject line was from our AI, which I thought was cool. The one thing executives want. It's intriguing. Insert personalization steps. So Brandon, I don't know how many emails you guys are sending, or if you are looking up these executives. I would highly suggest, if it's really the target persona, to do a little bit of research and spend some time and see if you can add something in there to get them to open that is just very specific to them. If that's not a possibility, I understand. Buyer intent and Zoom info sounds good. That's good. So buyer intent's great. You can definitely do some personalization around buyer intent, around what they're searching for, specific words, make it fun. But what I went into here was, it's no secret executives are struggling to process the flood of emails, calls, and requests that come in from having too much to do. See you later, Ed. And this is from you. I just reworded it a bit, but now that working from home has become the norm, teammates are working longer hours, letting important tasks drag on, etc. Very simply, we turn reactive teams into proactive workforces within 90 days to turn your big vision into a reaction. One thing you want to be careful of, Brandon, is in personal development, you're going to see a lot of words that don't mean a lot to certain specific personas, right? So if you come into, even on the website, you're going to see achieve more. To an IT executive, this probably is going to fall flat to them, because it just doesn't speak to the specific pain point that the IT executive is falling into. But what executives actually do care about is like revenue efficiency, which I'll use in a different email. So they're busy, they're working from home, folks are feeling the pain there. So perhaps you can get them to open that way. Follow-up email. So this one, what I would do, especially for an executive, is something short. So any thoughts, bumping this up? They work. They definitely work. And then provide just a little bit of context to back up, to get them to read the email that you just sent. Chances are you personalize that email, you spend a lot of time in that first one, and you just want to get them to read that thing again, or read it for the first time, and try to create something intriguing in that first line that's going to get them to open. Any thoughts, feedback on that, James?
Yeah, no, I mean, you're breaking this down perfectly. I'm seeing the exact same things that you are. And yeah, really like hammering home that context, especially when you're going after this level of executive, is just so important. And the more specific you can make that, and the more you can double down on that throughout the sequence, the better off you'll be.
Totally. Referral sequence. So Brandon, you could do a couple things here. Again, 2 sentences, but you're basically pointing to the fact that they don't have time to do anything, and they don't have time to get down to their emails, and they're too bogged down. So you could probably flip that around into something humorous that says, I've sent you 2 emails about you not being able to get to emails. Maybe there's somebody that can help you. Is there somebody more appropriate to talk to that handles this, so I can help you get to these emails in the future. I would do something humorous here. On the reintroduction side, again, some sort form of this isn't personalization by any stretch of my opinion, but it does help. But here, what I want to drive home here is use a value prop that they are thinking about all day long, right? And I back this up with some credibility. Some folks like this, some folks don't. The one thing I'll say to this is, Brandon, if you do have a long list of companies you guys have worked with, it's a popular book. I'm not sure how many consulting services you've sold, but I would assume that there's a good amount. There's some folks I know, like the CEO from Snowflake mentioned the One Thing book before. So there's some real hitters, I'm sure, that you guys can lean on. I would call them out as long as they're relevant to the company that you are targeting. So if you're targeting, a software company, don't use a telecommunications company. Use a software company, something like them. Even better if it's their competitors, in my opinion. So I would back that up with a couple of companies. Quick ask. This one asks for a time. Likely you've just like a quick interest-based CTA. So now coming into a reintroduction, you can go ahead and ask a question around time. I think there's a question here. Just some thought leadership in here. What do you guys think of a quote and subject line of touch one, a VP or C-level, something they say in their podcast or article? Could work if it's short enough trip. My only worry would be too long, but what you could do is say, love this quote from you, and then add the quote into the subject line, the first subject line, or this quote intrigued me, here's why. And then, or this quote intrigued me, and then the first line would be like, here's why. And then right below that, you can put the quote and, or this quote intrigued me, quote, here's why, and then tie in that quote to your value prop. Okay. All right, let's keep going. And then a quick PS here. PS, here's proof that we delivered results for this company, just so they know you're not, not lying. Not that you would. So this is a little bit longer of a bump email, but again, the reason why I pulled this out, Brandon, is just trying to call out that they're busy. I know you're, and without saying, I know you're busy. So this is one that we have in the system. Is exactly what's in the system, and it bumped up for IT executives. So when we build sequences in the system, we actually target the persona, and then Regie tailors the tone and messaging to that persona. So this is exactly what came out. I thought it was pretty good. Could use a little bit of tailoring into your specific use case because you're trying to sell to get their time back. And then, just a quick breakup email. I put this one in here. Who was asking about the humor? I mean, this isn't like very funny, but I think it was Jade. There are some emails I would really suggest to put a little bit of personality in there and try to stay away from the general personal development terms. Take action now, get more results, things that may sound good when you're saying them, but they don't deliver when you're using text, and use something more personal in this and try funniness. There's this one email, it's a bump email, or no, is it a referral email, the chocolate shake email, James? It's like, I bet
the chocolate shake one of my favorite emails.
I hate that email. I hate it. It says like, I bet my teammate a chocolate shake that, you wouldn't respond to this email. Something, I would never write it. Mm-hmm. But it's like one of the most powerful snippets we have. It like actually produces more reply rates than a lot of them. So try this stuff out. You never know what might land. Brandon, you got a lot of good stuff out of that book you can pull from. I'm sure tons of data points, and I would rely on those. I would rely on the folks that have implemented this stuff and just drive home that credibility. The one thing is a super popular book, so I'd be I'd be curious to find folks that actually haven't heard about the book, especially executives. So so this is the email. The one thing I wanted to come in here and see if we could get a better subject line. So let's go in, see if we can get something better to this one, this reintroduction. Let's see here. One thing that can double your sales. It could be the one thing that can double your productivity. One thing to maximize revenue. Twice. Just depends on if you want to capitalize that. Are you open to 5 minutes? That's not very good. Are you overworking your team? Oof. That doesn't feel good. I'd probably open that email actually. Yeah. So it could be some good stuff in here. Cool. Helpful, not helpful? Say yes either way. Any questions, comments? We got about 10 minutes here. Would love to take some questions. Let me go ahead and publish this.
One from Ryan come in. He said thoughts on cold texting being part of a sequence. So the thing with texting that you really need to be aware of is like privacy laws, especially if you're not sure where a prospect is. Like there's a lot of compliance when it comes to SMS that you just need to be really aware of. So I definitely would flex away from doing it for like cold prospecting. And in general, and this is more of a personal preference, but like I tend to flex away from using SMS in my sequences unless I know the person really well or I have an established relationship, because that can be easily perceived as like kicking in somebody's door and showing up to their dinner table, right? And don't want that when you don't know somebody. Rocco, what's your thought on that?
Sorry, I was just downloading Brandon's sequence here and rewriting some of the things. What was the question?
Using text messaging as a part of a sequence.
Oh, no, I don't like it. I'm not a fan. Inbound, totally fine. Inbound sequences, they opted in. Totally fine. There was like this trend about FaceTiming people for a while. Just, super intrusive. You're trying to establish a relationship here.
Yeah, texting, especially to like a cold prospect, always reminds me of like, in the early 2000s when your house phone was just going off the hook at all hours, people trying to sell you newspapers. Never felt good.
Yeah.
Couldn't get enough in to drive the relevancy.
Yeah, it's like knocking on doors. That's what it reminds me of. I was like, I don't want people knocking on doors.
Yeah. You ever sell Cutco knives? That was, I think, when I was 16, I sold Cutco knives door to door, and it was like nobody wanted to talk to you. It's the same thing with texting.
That's right. What do you guys think of looms or recorded snippets in emails? Actually, Trip, certainly worth looking at. We've used them internally. Some we've seen some good results, some bad results. I think there's some areas where you can definitely do it. One thing I would suggest if you're going to create a video trip is don't require them to watch the video to get the context. So one thing I would suggest is tie the video to like a pain point. So if you're talking about a pain point within the email, then share like that one feature maybe that if your team lets you show the product at all, but share that one little feature in like a 2-minute video, specifically how you solve that problem that you're talking about in the email. And also what I've seen is some folks will put the person that you're emailing, they'll put like the LinkedIn in the background just so they know that you've at least took the time to record a video for them from a personalized standpoint. What do you think about the format of are you 100% satisfied with blank or your people can't get any better at blank, right? Are you satisfied with So Michael, are you 100% satisfied with? Oh, go ahead, James. If you have.
Oh, yeah. No, I was just gonna say, like for me, I tend to ask those a little bit deeper into the sequence as follow-ups. Like I think of like when I've done writing for like IT or MSP customers, like one great question can be asking, are you 100% satisfied with your current IT solution? Like that can be a great door opener to getting the conversation started. And it can be really great to deploy those types of things to, and ask those types of questions on calls. Because then, if they say yes, you can, easily follow that with, okay, great. Well, how's that going? And then you can start to uncover deeper pain there that they might not have had top of mind for them, but you can help pull that out of them.
Yep, totally. Yeah, are you 100% satisfied with your blank? Could work. There's always alternative solutions to your product. And if you're bringing in folks, Michael, that maybe you've targeted a competitor or targeted an alternative solution. So if you're selling mattresses, maybe it's the topping to a mattress, but it's not a mattress competitor. Or if it's back pain pills and you're selling a mattress and you're targeting back pain companies. I've done some crazy stuff in marketing. So then you can say, are you 100% satisfied with your mattress topper? We actually have an entire mattress that is half the price and is better for you, right? So you could use it in that in that context. Your people can't get any better. So the one about that, it depends on how you use it. For me, Michael, like I don't like to be combative at all or challenge people in emails. I like to align as much as I can. So, it just depends on how you word it. But I would caution to it. What time of day do you think is best to send the emails? I don't know. I don't know what time of day. I actually don't even think about it. I think like these systems actually just figure it out themselves these days and just send it.
Yeah. I don't have a ton of thoughts on like the exact timing. I know I tend to, because it's really all about experimentation, right? Like it used to be very trendy that like you might want to do a batch of sends like late on a Sunday night to like higher level executives because that's when they're on their phones, like actually looking through their inbox. But that kind of ebbs and flows over time. So if you're using a platform that allows you to dictate a send schedule, like that's another thing that's really worth A/B testing, just so you can find the right mix to your specific personas there.
Okay, let me. I had another question here. John Fedden, what is the one best piece of advice to take away from this session? What do you guys think is the one best piece of advice you learned?
Like what Katie said, Katie talked about, continuously testing and just to double down on that, because I do think that that's one of the greatest takeaways there is the importance of testing. It's just so critical to what you do because, there's so many best practices out there and there's so many people that are, selling you different things and offering up different types of best practices. But the best way to know what works best for your business is by doing it and testing it out. So certainly continue to do that. And then the other thing is just like the exercise of really putting yourself into your prospect's shoes, like really specifically around, the pain that prospect feels, because that's going to help you talk about your solution and your product that much better anyway. And like even going through the exercise of like talking to current customers to understand like, why they initially came in or what got them, hooked on the product or service can be a really great exercise too.
Yeah. My best piece of advice is go talk to customer success, and because they're the closest to your actual customers and they're going to give you really what the pain points of the customers are to drive into your messaging. So go talk to them. They're doing customer interviews. They know what makes these folks tick, what part of the product is receiving value, and you're going to learn a ton from them more than anyone else. John's famous. You got your 15 seconds, John. Congratulations. Okay, we're at the top of the hour here, 2:59. You're welcome. Well, hope this was helpful. James, you rock, man.
Hey, dude, couldn't do it without you. This is a blast.
If anyone wants to send in their sequence, we're going to do this more often. We have like 10 of them to go through now. So we're probably going to do this again either next week or the week after. Stay tuned. We'll keep going at it. Please, you can just email me, Rocco@Regie.ai. The other link's in your email. Till then, happy selling, and hope you have a fantastic 3-day weekend.
Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.